Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Charles Forkett on March the 9th, 2017. And as you can see here, it's snowing outside. March the 9th. And I know it's March the 9th because we're in Proverbs chapter 9. And it got a longer winter this year, like I mentioned before. But you know what? Spring is on the way, you can tell. And I tell you what, Montana springs are just awesome. Everything comes to blooming and green, and the sun's back out again, and weather warms up, and it makes the winter very much worth it. So I'm thankful. I thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And we're 2 away from 800, and we're at 798, so I appreciate that, all of you that have subscribed. If you have not subscribed, I would encourage you to do just that. And when we get to the magic number 1,000, there's other options we have, and I'll mention those in a moment. So let's move on to Proverbs chapter 9, shall we? In Proverbs chapter 9, verse 1 brought my attention, or brought me to thinking about something that just happened in my life here in the last year, and I want to relate that to you, and hopefully you can learn from it. Wisdom hath built her house. Wisdom hath built her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. And then if we go down here to verse 9, Proverbs 9:9, give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. And then the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's the theme of Proverbs. And the knowledge of holy is understanding. The fear of the Lord, there's 2 things: a respect, a reverential trust in the Lord, Yahweh, and a hatred of evil. If you can get those 2 things, that's the beginning of wisdom. That's the main point of wisdom. That's the most important thing. That's the principal thing. And I look back and I realize that, I've been reading the Bible for over 40 years now, and I used to read Proverbs. I'm not sure how I got in the habit. Somebody told me, just like I'm telling you, that the Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, has 31 chapters in it, 1 chapter for each day. You'll never not know what day it is if you start your day with a chapter of Proverbs. Today's chapter 9, as we mentioned. And I've got some things here to share with you, but let's go back up to that verse. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. What exactly does that mean? I'm sure you've all heard the saying in real estate. I used to be a real estate developer. I was involved in real estate. I've heard this many, many times. It's location, location, location. Well, in learning and in teaching, it's repetition, 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 but in a different way. Repetition with variety. And in order to be a good teacher, in order for your students to learn, I believe a good teacher will repeat the important topics over and over and over again, repeat them, but with variation. So let's go back to Proverbs 1:5. This is the key put at the beginning of Proverbs. A wise man will hear, and I take that, a wise man will listen. In other words, when we are listening, we're not talking. And I used to teach my students, and they used to love it. I used to tell them, you've got 2 ears that are always open, and you've got a mouth with lips, and your lips are to keep your mouth closed, because there's many times you shouldn't be talking, and this is one of those times, young man. And they laugh, and Mr. Charles, I was referred to as Mr. Charles, and so many people, they want to talk, but they don't want to listen. We should be talking half as much, at least, if not more, and then we listen. And how do we listen? We listen by asking questions. We let the other person talk. People love to talk, so let them talk. And if you get the right person and you ask the right questions, you can learn quite a bit. But the second part of this, let's take a look at the second part of this. And a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsel. And let's look at the other English translations, because I don't think the King James Version really explains it. So let's go have a look at that, shall we? I think the translation that explains it the best, or in a good way, the accurate way, is this one right here. This is the easy to read version. I don't recommend these, but sometimes they're helpful. These other translations are often mostly error. Even the wise could become wiser by listening to these proverbs. They will gain understanding and learn to solve difficult problems. Others translated, the one who understands obtains guidance. And then I think this is good. Even those with understanding, can find good advice. A wise person will listen. That's a good one. Will listen and continue to learn, and an understanding person will gain direction. So we got a pretty good understanding what this means here. So let's go back. So as I mentioned before, I used to be a building contractor, and then I developed and became a real estate developer. I started with one spec house, a speculative house. I built it on speculation that someone would want to buy it. From there, from my first project, I went to 24 lots the next time. So 24 times larger in my second project. And my third project was 75 lots. And it was 3 times bigger than the previous one. So I do have experience in construction and building and real estate development. And I tell you all that because I met a young man here last spring, and he had moved into the area new, and we're not too far from each other. And he told me he was building a house, and he was a building contractor. And I'll just tell you, he's less than half my age. And I said, oh, that's a good, that's a good trade to have. That's a good thing to have. And that's a good skill to know. And I said, I told him about my background. And I said, well, what are you doing now? He says, oh, I'm building a house that we're going to move into. And I go, oh, well, that's cool. That's a good feeling. I know what that's like. And I said, but you're kind of young to be moving into your own first house, aren't you? And I won't go into that, but he had his reasons, and I don't agree with his reasons, but hey, he's his own man. A few weeks later, not more than 2 months, maybe 6 weeks later, we talked again, and I said, well, how's your house going? And I said, he says, good, you need to come over and see it sometime. And yeah, I never did, and I'll tell you why here in a moment. I said, well, when you moving in? When he talked the first time, he was going to move in October. He'd be done with the house and move in October. Stop paying rent and move in October. So he's using his money saved to build this house, and they were going to move in October. And then hopefully get his money back from the bank when he got a mortgage and be able to use that money again. And I said, well, when you moving in? He goes, well, we got a problem. And I go, yeah, what's that? And he told me, and I said, well, I told you about my background. I think I think we could figure out a solution if you ever want to hear it. Because I stopped giving free advice. I learned that I don't give free advice anymore, because free advice is usually worth the price, and people don't really appreciate your advice when it's free. But I said, if you ever want to talk about it, you let me know. And so time went on, and here it is, March. He was going to move into his house in October, and here it is March, and he hasn't moved into his house yet, and he's still paying rent, plus all of his money's into this house. So, and he has never come back and said, hey, Charles, you know, I would like your advice. You've got experience over me. He knows that I read the Bible because he's been in my house. He knows my background as a real estate developer. He knows I have an interest in Scripture. So do you think he would come back and go, hey, you know, Charles, you got a lot more experience than I do. You're older than I am. What is your advice? I would really like to hear what your advice is. Proverbs 1:5. A wise man will listen and increase learning and learn how to solve problems, difficult problems. Well, this young man never came back. So he's learning the hard way. There's two ways to learn. The easy way to learn is through the wisdom and experience of others, and the hard way to learn is through your own experience. So he's chosen to learn the hard way, and that's fine. You got your choice. And the other thing that I mentioned here is I noticed there's no respect, or very little respect, by younger people for older people. There's just not there. When I was his age, if I would have run across somebody who was a real estate developer with as much experience as I have, and who also believed in the Scripture like this young man says he does, I would have taken him up on the advice, because I had been reading Proverbs and I understood the importance of getting experience, or learning through the experience of others. I remember older men. I remember this one fellow named Andrew Rosiah. Older gentleman, very wealthy man. I won't go into it, but I showed him respect. I asked him questions. We developed a friendship. He was quite a bit older, very wealthy man. I did a lot of work for Mr. Andy Rosiah. He always said, call me Andy. And because I showed him respect, I listened, and I heard what he had to say, and he gave me advice. I remember one advice, he says, don't put on weight, because it's very difficult to take it off. And boy, was he correct in that one. Anyway, so by having read and believed and taking Proverbs 1:5 to heart and putting it into practice, I was able to become a fairly wealthy man. And I'm not saying it was all just because of that. I worked hard for my wealth. And I want to bring your attention at this time to this book, Think and Grow Rich. And there's a chapter in here called Specialized Knowledge. And Mr. Napoleon Hill, he sold hundreds of thousands of copies. And right here on page 58, he talks about the mastermind group. And I've mentioned a couple times in these videos that I'd like to develop a mastermind group. And when we get to 1,000 subscribers, we can put that into operation. If people are interested, you're not interested, that's fine. I got a lot of other things to do. So if you're not interested, I don't care. I'm not into making a lot of money anymore. I already did that, been there, done that. I just want to make enough money now to get by and pay the bills. And I'm willing to share my experiences and my knowledge with others. And the accumulation of great fortunes calls for power, and power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge, but that knowledge does not have to be in the possession of the man who accumulates the fortune. And he used the example of Henry Ford, and that's kind of outdated now, but it's by listening to others and surrounding you with people who have specialized knowledge that they have acquired, that they're willing to share with you. How many people do you know that are willing to share with you what they've learned through their hard experience and to help you become more successful in your life? I submit there's very few, and you have to pay for it. You got to buy their book, you got to listen to their webinar, their seminar, etc. We can do the same thing here, and it can be scripturally oriented. Anyway, I hope that experience and that anecdote from my own life helps you. I want to thank you for subscribing. I want to thank you for listening. A wise man will listen and increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. A man of understanding will be able to apply the wisdom that he gains to solve difficult problems. I look forward to working with you. I think I've got a lot of very knowledgeable and wise subscribers. I know this channel is not for everyone. If I wanted to get a lot of subscribers, I would talk on different subjects. But I'm very hopeful, with the help of the Lord Yahweh, Yeshua, who is wisdom. He's the personification of wisdom. In these difficult times, we can all do very, very well if we listen and lean on the Lord. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. May the grace of God, Yahweh, Yeshua, may his grace be upon us all, for we certainly need it. See you.